G'day everyone. I thought I'd do up another set of tutorial videos. In this set of tutorials or videos I should say, sorry, I'm going to go through and do fully worked solutions to this week's being week 4 or tutorial 3's queries. The reason why I'm doing this is because I believe we've made a major step in terms of our SQL artillery and in the types of SQL that we'll be using. In the previous weeks we've only really we have only worked with single file, or should I say single table queries. So when we have one table and we want to extract information from it. In the first tutor was obviously just a very basic introduction where we were selecting bits and pieces. In the second tutorial we stepped it up a little bit of a notch, and we showed that we can easily modify it so that we can select only certain bits of the data. Further to that, we were also able to show that we can also perform calculations on the data, so that for instance, if we want to find the count of a certain thing or the sum of a certain thing, etc. And we went through a few basic descriptive statistical functions and just some basic functions that are associated with SQL. Further to that, we introduced another very important command in SQL, being the group by clause. I'm going to assume that you guys understand how the group by clause is working, or how it works. However, if you are still having trouble with the conceptualizing how it actually works and what it's actually doing in the background, I'm more than happy to do another video on that, because these are all obviously very important things for you to be able to understand if you're going to progress in SQL. So everything sort of builds off each other, and the queries that we're going to be doing this week there is going to be some of them that are going to assume that you understand group by. So anyway, as you can see on the desktop here, I've just got a file IMB122 as I've always prescribed. Within it we've got the SQLite file, we've got the 2 database files, and then I've got a week 4 directory. Now I'm going to be doing things in separate directories for separate weeks. However, if you're unfamiliar you'll see that when I'm running SQLite that I have to give it the extra directory to show where the files are. If you're not too familiar with that, I recommend just saving all of your queries within this file and not creating a folder for it. So I'm going to open up the Tut3. If you're wondering why it's under a different file association, it's just because I haven't installed Microsoft Office onto this operating system yet, and as such it's just defaulting with WordPad. So I'll open that up. Yes. Now for this week's questions, we're not going to be doing anything, at least in question 1. I'm not going to be doing anything with the DreamHome database, so I'm going to delete the schema information for it, and the only reason why I do that is just so we can have all the information contained in one window. Now we're only going to be answering this question here, but in the videos to come I'll start off in this window, and therefore you can understand why the DreamHome has been deleted. Okay, so it says to list the price and type of all the rooms of the Grosvenor Hotel. So that's a question that we're going to answer here. First and foremost, obviously we need to open up SQLite. Now if you're running, I haven't checked it out in Vista, but I know in all the labs they've got Windows 7, and there's a shortcut way of being able to do it, or a nice way of being able to open up SQLite with the database, and then you can highlight it and drag it over. It'll come up with a little pop-up saying open with SQLite 3. You then just allow that to happen, so you release the file and then it comes up with a run command and opens it up in CMD. So this is XP, so I'm just going to have to quickly open it up here. I'll just quickly go through this purely and solely because this is contained in one of the other tutorial videos. So cd desktop /IMB122. Okay, so now I'm going to open up the file, so it's SQLite 3, and hotel. Remember, I'm just going to turn the column headers on. I'm going to change the output mode or the display mode to be column. And also just as I was saying before, and I showed in the other videos, if you type the dot tables, it's like a lot, it's not a way of absolutely proving that you've opened up the database correctly, but it's a good indicator. If we type dot tables, we'll see a listing of all the tables, which corresponds to the schema that we've got here. There's a couple of extra here. They're sort of hidden that you wouldn't actually use in the normal database. So anyway, we now are going to go into answering this question. And as I'm using Windows here, I'm going to be doing my queries in Notepad++. So just very quickly, if you're getting tired every time that you open up a new query of having to change the language to SQL, you can actually change the settings so that it defaults in SQL. You just click Settings, Preferences, and then from there you click the New Document / Default Directory, and then see this default language here. It'll be, I think it'll be on text file by default if you haven't changed it. Just click up and then scroll through, you'll see that there's SQL. So just change to SQL and hit close, and then from then on there, every time you open up a new tab, it'll be in SQL. Okay, and then that'll also save into your file system, so every time you open up Notepad++ as well. Okay, so let's have a look at what the query is actually asking us to do and have a think about what tables we think we're going to have to use. So it says list the price and the type. So having a look through our database schema here, immediately this comes to mind. In the room table we've got type and we've got price. So just starting off with like a really basic query, we're going to select everything, I'll select everything from hotel, and that's it. I'll just save this query. I'm going to put it into the subfolder of that folder in the directory, but like I said, if you're not familiar with that sort of stuff, just leave it in this folder here. Call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it question 1 part 1. Save. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly run that. So .read, so this is where I have to add the directory. That's what I'm saying. If you're not good with that sort of stuff, just save it in the one, and then you would just have to read. And then it would just be .read, forgetting the week 4 /bit SQL. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got here. So sorry, this is the hotel database. What I meant to do was the room. I apologize. So save that. So I'll quickly change it. So it was doing exactly what it was after. We'll actually be able to use that result anyway in a second. Okay, so we have a look here. And in the room table we've got a type field or column and price field. These are the two things that we're interested in, but we only want the ones that correspond to the Grosvenor Hotel. So having a look in this table here where we're selecting everything from the hotel table, we see that H1 corresponds to the Grosvenor Hotel. So if I wanted to actually just filter this, knowing that information, I would just go where, sorry, I should learn to spell, where hotel number is equal to H1. Now technically that is a correct query. So if I was to run that file, which I'll do now, you'll see that now I've got all the H1s, which if I scroll up, that corresponds to the Grosvenor Hotel. But let's just say you didn't know that information, or you weren't able to assume that information. And this becomes very important too, because what if the Grosvenor Hotel changes from being H1 to H8? Then that means, let's just say you've got hundreds of queries created, and they're all centered around having this H1 here. Then that would mean then that you would have to go through and you would have to update and change them all to being H8. And that's no good. So what we actually want to do is we want to replace this element here with an actual query which will get us that result. So we'll do that in a separate SQL file, and then I'll show you how to combine the two into what we call a nested SQL query. So having a look at here, this is just where we're selecting everything from the hotel database. If I want to select just the H1 column, or if I want to get the row that, or the elements that are corresponding to the Grosvenor Hotel, it would just simply be, so we'll start off with selecting everything from, and this is the hotel, where, excuse me, hotel name is equal to Grosvenor Hotel. Okay, so semicolon, I'll save this, I'll just call this one, I don't know, dummy, for instance. Cool, whatever. I'm gonna, like I said, get rid of this in a second. Okay, so if we were to run that file, what it should return, or what we expect it to return, is just this record here, because that's the only one. Grosvenor Hotel will only appear once in this, and that's because in this case hotel number is a primary key. So it's something that we will go into more detail as we go along. And it is important for this week because it's how we actually match up columns. Generally, not always, but generally. Okay, so let's run that query. So I'm just going to hit up, and it's week 4, and I called it dummy.sql, and we see that it returns the results. Now we're not interested, as I said before, in actually having all of the results or all of the output associated with that record. All I'm interested in is the hotel number. So we can easily change that. So we've been through this stuff before. So it's just we're selecting the hotel number. Okay, so if we run that query again, it now selects just the hotel number H1. So now we've got a query here which will select us the hotel number no matter, let's just say, like I said, if we update the table later on and change Grosvenor Hotel from being H1 to H8, this query here will always select the hotel number that corresponds to the Grosvenor Hotel. And that's the information that we then want to use, or this query is the query that, in terms of its result, is what we want to use in this filtration here. So instead of having H1, and like I said, if Grosvenor was to change to H8, this wouldn't work. We can now replace it with this SQL query, and it will work no matter what. So no matter how we update it. So this is one of the beauties of, this is why, you know, at the start I said it's good to use Notepad++, because we can get it so that it auto aligns everything up. And what I'm going to do is obviously just copy and paste this query, and I'm going to put it into here. So we're actually evaluating, like, essentially we're not evaluating two SQL queries, but it's sort of two SQL queries in terms of how we've been building them before. But we're able to do them all in one go, purely and solely because, let me just zoom out a bit more so you can see it all. We're able to do an SQL query in here, and the way that, you don't have to worry about how the compile works, but the way that this will work is it'll evaluate this query first and then add it into here. So now if we read this, it goes select all from room where hotel number equals, it then evaluates this query. We know this is going to return H1, so then it'll be select all from room where hotel number is equal to H1, which is perfect. So if this is doing it all correctly, it should evaluate it so that we get these results here. So this is the room table, and we want to have these records here. So these are what correspond to the H1s. We don't want any of the H2s, 3s, 4s, etc. So let's save that, and let's run it. So we're going to be running, and this query is query1i.sql. So what have I done wrong here? Oh, notice here I've got the semicolon in here. So it thinks that's the end, which is obviously incorrect. The end of the query is there, so that's why I came up with that error there. So let's run that again, and voila, we see that we've got the exact results that we're after. We've got all of the H1s, we've got the room numbers here as well, of those rooms that are contained within the room table that match up with the hotel, Grosvenor Hotel, which, as we just showed before, is H1. Now obviously this is incomplete. We're actually providing more information than what we actually need. It just says to list the price and the type. So simple modification, instead of selecting all, we're now just going to select the price and the type. So that's all there is to it. We'll run it just to make sure it works. So all this query now is going to do, like the modification I made to the query, is it's just going to cull these two fields. Okay. So if we run that, and voila, we see that we get the right, the correct result. All it's done is just cut these out. So this is a listing of the price and the type of all of the rooms that are associated with the Grosvenor Hotel. So it corresponds to room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4, room 5. It doesn't ask us to list the rooms. It just says to list the price and the type of the rooms. Okay, so that is the solution to the question. I hope that wasn't too bad to understand, but as I say with everything, if you've got any problems, please email me. That's what I'm here for, and I'll do my very best to clarify it as best I can. Okay,